Would you be happy to pay for somebody else to go to the CrossFit Games? Well, it's probably going to depend on what they're doing there. Welcome back to the channel. So it turns out actually getting to the CrossFit Games can be pretty expensive. So it's not unusual for us to see athletes trying to raise funds to help cover the costs. But what was slightly unusual was the example that was shown to me today of somebody else raising money so that they could go to the CrossFit Games. And they're not an athlete. So I'd like your opinion on this. So feel free to let me know in the comments what you think. And also it's a great opportunity to subscribe if you haven't done so already. So when it comes to raising money, there's probably a number of factors we want to consider. In fact, if you watched the previous video I did on whether or not it's better to be good or popular, well, we could reason that there are a number of athletes that did not punch their ticket to the games this year, although they would be popular enough that if they had a ticket to the games, well, probably sponsors and the deals they have in place would have covered those costs and it would be easy for them to get there. Whereas we have some athletes that are definitely good enough, they've earned their spot at the games, but maybe they're not popular enough to attract those big sponsors that can pay the way, or even enough medium-sized or smaller sponsors that are going to help offset the costs. And this is the case even within the elite field, particularly when we look to the teams. Now, that could be because all we spoke about was Mayhem versus Reykjavik, and then we saw Oslo compete, we saw Invictus compete, so they joined the discussion. But what about all the other teams? If we're not talking about them, if they're not getting any screen time, it's going to be hard for them to attract those big sponsors that are going to help pay for their trip to the CrossFit Games. Now, it's true this also happens to the elite men and women as well, but we probably know a lot more of the elite individuals than we do of the teams. And then what happens when we go out away from the elite field and we start looking at the age groups, the adaptive division? Well, they haven't even had an in-person semi-final, so they've had 0 screen time so far. We're not talking about them as much, and who knows how much screen time they'll even get at the games. So again, it's really hard for them to attract those sponsors that are going to help them out with the cost of traveling to the games. And if you've been following along and seen my videos about the adaptive division, about the masters division, well, you'll know that they already feel like they're getting a pretty raw deal. So I would say it's 100% understandable why there is the need to get additional funding from the CrossFit community. And I've seen a number of different ways that people have gone about doing this. And I don't want to say that one way is right or one way is wrong. People are different. The way they feel about the situation can be different. For example, CrossFit Aylesbury, Team Tap, what have they done? Well, they've put out a t-shirt to support their journey. So their friends and the community that wants to get behind them can buy this t-shirt. But then something interesting happened. So I was speaking to Mike Catras about this, and basically they don't have a GoFundMe page or a Just Giving page. But what was happening is people were saying to them, all right, I'll buy 5 or 6 t-shirts because that way you guys get more money. But they didn't really want 5 t-shirts, but this was just a way they could give more. So what they did was make a little drop down. So when you're ordering the t-shirt, there's a little drop down menu and you can offer to pay some additional money, an additional donation towards the team. But you still get the t-shirt. And that's because they didn't want to feel like they were asking for something without giving something back in return. That's just how they felt about the situation. So now you've got 2 options. You can buy a t-shirt to support them, or you can buy a very expensive t-shirt to support them. But both ways, you're getting something from them. Another interesting example could be that of Vicky Finn-Smith, who is a masters athlete in the 35 to 39 division. Yes, she was also selling t-shirts the same, but she also did something like a raffle where you could pay to enter this raffle and then there were prizes like a rower. So once again, it's that idea of, yes, you're helping support me on my journey, but it's not for nothing. There's an opportunity here for you to win a big prize, so you're still getting something back. And I think at this point, it's important to remember just how supportive the CrossFit community is in general. We're more than happy to support these athletes, especially if they're people we know or we've interacted with. The community loves to get behind their favorite athletes, even on a local level. For example, look at what Peter from Coffee Pods and Wads did to help support CrossFit 80/20. So they have 6 people going to the games, an adaptive athlete, a masters athlete, and a team. So they'd put together a page where you could go and donate to support their journey. But he managed to put together a big prize pool so that people that donated, they could screenshot that they'd given a donation, and then they would be entered into this raffle to win some pretty big prizes. So that's a really great use of the platform that he's built to try and help support members of the CrossFit community. And then, of course, we have to think that people have different circumstances. So, for example, this is Bart Walsh. He qualified out of the neuromuscular division from Australia. So his wife set up a GoFundMe page, and it's estimated that it's going to cost them 20,000 Australian dollars to pay for this trip. So that's a pretty big cost for him to get there. And then he's not going to have that same recognition that the elite individuals and teams get. So again, the challenge to raise the funds is there. So what is clear is that we have a wonderful community that really want to get behind and support these athletes that have worked so hard to get their ticket to the games. Whether it's a team where 4 people have had to rearrange their lives, schedule everything to make sure that they can train together, that they can meet the standards and the requirements set out by CrossFit, and then compete in a very competitive division at the semi-finals to actually punch their ticket to the games. Or masters athletes that every year as they get older, younger masters move into their category, or are incredibly inspirational, adaptive athletes and how hard they're working. And I know I haven't mentioned the teens particularly, but they're going through the same struggles of having to find funding. I suppose the only advantage they have is that a lot of brands will see the incredible potential of these teens, especially as we see younger and younger people making it to the games to compete in the elite division and how incredible they are. People are looking to the teens. They want to see who's going to be the next Mallow Brain. And now we move on to the example that was shown to me earlier today. And I'll be honest, it was presented in a negative light, as in the person that was showing me really didn't agree with what they were doing. But I'm just going to give you the facts of the matter and you can form your own opinion. But I do think it merits discussion. Now, I'm not going to say the name of the person or put up an image of them. And actually, I might mention this situation and you're thinking of somebody else, because I don't believe they are the only one doing this. But how would we feel if a judge was setting up a GoFundMe so that we would help pay for their trip to the CrossFit Games? Because this is what's happening. Now, on the one hand, we need judges. It's an incredible experience for them to judge at the highest level of competition. I mean, they had to get the call up from CrossFit. They were picked out of the hat to be one of the people that could go there. So it's maybe for them a once-in-a-lifetime experience. But what about judges that didn't volunteer because they knew they couldn't afford to go? You know, this is ultimately their hobby, and they obviously have to think about how much they can afford to spend on that hobby. And then with this situation, could we start to create a system where people feel free to volunteer without thinking about the cost and whether or not they'd be able to afford to go, feeling that, well, I can always set up a page to have other people pay for my trip to go to the CrossFit Games, or at least a contribution towards it? Or what about the defense we give to judges when we say, look, we can't be hard on the judges. They're volunteers. No one is paying them to do this. This is their time, their money. So we, take it easy. Don't attack the judges. Well, I still would say don't attack the judges even if they are paid. But at the same time, it's hard when we're thinking, well, hold on, it's not their money they're spending to get there. It was my money that they spent to get there. Well, then, of course, if they have set up this page and people are actually contributing to it, then they must be getting support for what they're doing. So clearly not everybody thinks it's a bad thing. Maybe this has been a dream of theirs for a long time. And, money's tight and they just can't afford it at the moment. So they need help. But it's been a dream for a lot of people, right? But there are people that have worked incredibly hard, put in hours of training, made sacrifices so that they were in a position to get that ticket to the CrossFit Games. And now they just need a little bit of financial help to get them the rest of the way. And until CrossFit can make it more financially stable for all athletes that compete, this is going to be the reality. Athletes are going to need to raise funds. And if we can afford to give, that's great, and we can support these people within our community. So I guess at the end of the day, where we choose to put our money is probably an indication of who we feel truly deserves that help to get to the CrossFit Games. And on that note, I wish the best to all the athletes that are making it to the CrossFit Games, and it is incredible to see the support of the community that they have behind them. Speaking of support, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and maybe send a few people my way. That would be a wonderful way that you could show some support to me. Until then, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in a future video.